All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the OER grant webinar featuring general incentives, small group, and individual projects. Today, we have three grant PIs who are going to share their experience managing their grants, preparing their grants, writing their grants. And so our three representatives today is Dr. Megan Rector of Arapahoe Community College, who is the PI for their general incentive grant. And then we have Matthew Watts of Red Rocks Community College, who is one of the PIs for a small group grant focusing on mathematics. And then finally, we have Susan Reynolds, who is presenting on doing an individual project where she created a statics textbook. And so we're going to kick off first with Megan.
All right. As Chelsea mentioned, I work at Arapahoe Community College. I serve as our faculty chair of our Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. So I wear a lot of hats, do a lot of faculty development and other things to improve teaching here at ACC. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Uh, I have a lot of tabs open right now. So do a quick little. Oops. Go back. Okay. So. And y'all can see my title slide. Okay, cool. All right, so I am here to talk today about our General Incentive Fund, which is arguably our most successful and longest running grant. We have been doing this since the very, very beginning of the CDHE OER grant. And so I'll be kind of walking through what we've done, where we started, and then how we've kind of grown it since. So could not talk about this without talking about the person who originated the whole thing at ACC, and that was Lisa Chestnut. She is our Associate Dean of the Library and Learning Commons, and she is the first one who envisioned and applied for this grant and put together an OER committee and all those good things. I was here at ACC at the time as a part-time instructor, so I was not really involved in that. And it was after year 3 of the grant that at that point I was full-time, and she handed it over to me, and I've been PI ever since. So some of the initial things that Lisa did to really get us off on the good foundation. Number one of the things she did with some of the grant funds is we brought in Lisa Young, which if you're familiar with the OER world, Lisa Young is a pretty big player in it. She's from the Maricopa system in Arizona. And she came in to do a big presentation on our professional development day about OER. That was my first introduction to it. And she talked a little bit about what it was and the benefits it had to students. And as a part-time instructor, I got paid to attend, which was wonderful. And so that was really well attended, and that really helped us kick off. And then the next big thing she did is when she was applying for the grant, right, to incentivize folks to switch to OER, she made connections first with people who were willing to do the work, and just did a small number of courses with people that already were bought in, right? So find out like who your allies are and who already wants to do OER, and start with them. So these were the 4 disciplines that we started with. English composition, which was huge. We did English 1021, which is like intro level English comp. Ton of sections of that. Really huge reach. Principles of microeconomics is another one that has been OER, ever since. Conceptual physics with lab, which was our first ever science one, because some of y'all may know the sciences are a little bit trickier. And then public speaking, which is what I teach, which is also a class with a ton of sections, and they switched all the public speaking classes to OER, which was really great. And then what they did with the incentive funding program is they basically, we paid different amounts based on the scope of the work, right? And so if you're doing a full-on creation or remix, the numbers have changed over the years. Last year was paying about $1,850 for remixes, $1,050 for straight adoption, because that includes all the work to do to adopt the new text and also adopt your materials to the new text. And then if someone else did the adoption, we were also paying people. I think when I did it, I got like $100. Last year it was up to about $175 for the work it takes to if someone else has done the adoption, I still had to update my course materials, my quizzes, and so the money helped support that. And then also later on, we started paying for things like ancillary materials, especially some of these bigger things that people are doing, building homework platforms and creating videos and all other kinds of cool stuff. And then the other big thing, of course, that was really helpful was she started off on doing professional development. So after the big kind of launch, we had continued, workshops and things to help learn more about OER, which is something that we still continue today. So Lisa originated our OER committee. This is the makeup currently. It's changed a bit over the years, so people have hopped on and off. I will point out, so I chair the committee. And on here, you'll see Joan Anderson, Monica Fugeli, and Cara Idle, and Courtney Dale, I think. They have been on the committee since like year one. And I've stuck with it because it's like a really great group. But definitely this is where like find the people who are going to be supportive of you and your work. So as you can see, a lot of these people are faculty, and we really try to get representation in a number of different disciplines. We also have representation, Monica started, she's English faculty, but now she's our concurrent enrollment chair. So having her is a huge asset to help get this out to our concurrent enrollment courses. We have an instructional designer, we have our LMS coordinator, we have a librarian. We also have one part-time instructor. We're looking on getting a second part-time instructor as well, because that instructor representation is really important to me as well. So that's our committee. We call ourselves the best committee at the college because we all get along really well, amazingly, and we think we're pretty fabulous. I just realized I left John Mann off of this. John Mann, business faculty, is also on our committee. So here's kind of a timeline of what we've done from year one to now. So the beginning of the OER grant was fall 2019, and that year is when Lisa Young came in and we really started kicking it off. And so during that time, 8 courses converted to OER. So it was public speaking, English comp, I think 1 and 2 did it, the micro, and then I think a couple other economics courses, and then the physics. So she was able to get 8 courses converted to OER. And then we doubled it the next year to 16. And this is all from like doing professional development. Those people who converted the courses became kind of ambassadors for OER. So sharing out, the benefits that you've seen from it. Like I remember the very first day of public speaking when I was able to tell my students, you don't need to buy a book, the book's right here, and the impact that has made. And so that's been like a major selling point for us. And then 26 new courses in 21 to 22. And at that point, astronomy became our first fully OER discipline. So our natural sciences chair, Jennifer Jones, really went full steam ahead, converted all of astronomy to OER, and it is still OER. So we're very proud of that. And this is around the time I was on the committee. I joined the committee in about 2020. And then at this point was when it got handed over to me to be PI. And one of the things I'll mention about this, because if you're pursuing a grant and you've never done a grant before, I didn't know anything about grant management at the time, but this grant is pretty easy to manage. You probably have people at your institution who do grants, right? So we have someone who helps us with the writing of the grants. We have our fiscal people who help make sure that we're doing our budgeting and our spending correctly and staying within those regulations. And then Lisa really helped coach me, kind of through my first year of it. And the way the grant is set up as well is fairly easy to implement. It's very clear and straightforward, which I really like. At that point, we also 30 more courses became OER, and we then hit 2 million total cost savings for our students. We had a big party about it. We had cake. It was great. And then 2023, 2024, we exceeded the 3 million mark in cost savings. And then that's when we started, which is a separate grant we have, but ECE started working towards our first Z degree. And then this last year, as of this very semester, geoscience is our second fully OER discipline. And that actually encompasses multiple subject areas because it's geography, geology, and environmental science. And so those all went full OER, all the books, all the labs, everything, which is pretty cool. So here's kind of the overall impact. It's impacted a lot of our students. After this last year, we're still kind of crunching the numbers, but we're reaching upwards of $4 million now in total cost savings. We're in 39 different course prefixes, which is pretty exciting. So some of the strategies that we've employed over the years that have been very successful. So number one, of course, is the incentive funding program. If you pay them, they will come, right? People want to be compensated for the work they're doing. And so, compensating and compensating fairly for that work is really important. The way that we do it is you can submit an application and the committee reviews it, and then we'll approve you pending completion of the work and the class running with those materials, because we want to see outcomes for it. So we're not going to prepay for the incentive fund, but as soon as your class is running with those materials, we'll pay you for it. And so again, we have different funding levels depending on the scope of work. Continued professional development at all of our different professional development events. We've been doing that. We've doing a lot of data tracking and reporting. So in addition to our grant reports where we pull a lot of that data, we've started doing a lot of surveys of our faculty and students. I'll show you a couple kind of highlights from those here in a bit. But that's really helped us kind of track, what is working well, where is it working well, what are the disciplines and things that we still need to kind of make inroads in. We've done events during Open Ed Week, and we kind of do something different every year. This picture on here is what we did this year. Is kind of a student advocacy focused event where we were talking to our students about OER and how to advocate, for other instructors to implement OER, and also how to maybe advocate at the state level for continued support of OER. We did an OER-nival, which we were very proud of as a carnival-themed event. And we do this, the nice thing is Open Ed Week coincides with the opening of registration, so we show our students how to register for OER courses. We do a lot of tabling at campus events. So we use part of our grant money a few years back to get a nice little OER tablecloth. And if there's a resource fair, if concurrent enrollment is having an event, if there's an event for, faculty and instructors, then we will show up, set up a table and talk to folks about OER. We've done it for registration events as well to talk to students about it. A lot of communication and marketing, right? So we've done things like OER superhero posters, where people dress like OER heroes. We will write blurbs and articles and things for our campus-wide communications. We'll put up flyers for things. We send out a lot of email updates and information. So keeping people in the loop about what's going on with OER is real important. And then recently, we've really started looking more into student advocacy. And this came after attending the Open Education Conference last year. But really getting our students more involved. This is something we're still working on, but talking more to our students. We made a little fact sheet, and I've been telling my students, if you're in any classes where you're paying for textbooks, ask your professors why they're not using OER. And if anyone has, questions, I have common myths and misconceptions that students can use to dispel some of that. So those are kind of the main strategies we're using. And then here's some of the key impacts. And I'll kind of go through these fairly quickly. But we did a student survey a couple semesters ago, and the majority of our students said, yes, course materials are important to my success. And we found that 17% of our students have dropped a course because they couldn't afford materials, and that's something that we want. And 26% opted for a different course because they couldn't afford materials. And we've been using this as a big selling point to our faculty and to our leadership, because what we want is student retention. And if our students are dropping or changing classes because they can't afford the materials, that's a problem, not just for the teachers, but for the school, right? And so, sorry, I was just saw the chat pop up. There we go. We've also had students fail because they couldn't afford the course material. Some students will try to go without, and that's not helpful. It does impact course selection. We try to use that as a big selling point too. We're trying to make it so it's like if you're not doing OER, you're not one of the cool kids, and so your students are going to be more happy with you and love you more if you do OER. And so that's a strategy we use. And yeah, students who have done OER, we found that they're quite familiar with these materials, and they are more likely than to seek out other no text cost courses. And then 69% said that having access to those materials at the beginning of the semester supported their success. And I know that if anyone here, Matthew's from Red Rocks, and I know if any of y'all are from other CCCS schools, other than CCD. You know, we switched bookstore vendors and it was a hot mess this semester and students could not access their course materials. And I've been using that as an opportunity to go around saying, huh, you wouldn't have that problem if you were OER. And so, you know, that's been sort of a blessing in disguise. And then some student perspectives. Students really like the OER materials. The only real complaint that students have is sometimes how they're packaged. So we've been trying to get out a lot more professional development about press books and other ways you might put those materials together. But they rate it just as high quality as, you know, any other type of course materials. They think they're very comprehensible, readable. We work really hard. One of the requirements of our grant is to get funded. You have to make all your materials accessible, and then we do double check that you're meeting accessibility standards. 84% use it the same as or more than their traditional materials. Most had no difficulties using it. And again, the ones with difficulties were things like maybe having to download multiple articles and things like that. So we're working, you know, with the faculty on other ways of packaging that information. And then these are just some general quotes from our students, you know, just to show the benefit of it. And again, we're really trying to start to leverage this perspective and have our students talk more about their experiences with it so people see that real impact. The one about you know, lugging around another textbook in your backpack. At our last 2 Open Ed Week events, we did how much does your backpack weigh? And our heaviest backpack from one of our students was, I think, 26.2 pounds. And so they also appreciate not having to carry around so many books. And then one of my favorite things, and this is from a 2022 survey we did, but I love this quote. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just this part in the purple really stood out to me, where the student said, in my opinion, nothing should block you from educational and useful information that could transform this country and this world. And that's been, you know, really, really powerful here as well. And then from an instructional perspective, these are some of the like talking points that we use for faculty, some of the benefits that we try to sell, and then some of the challenges we try to address. So obviously, major benefit, no cost, low cost. If you're trying to get leadership buy-in, this is another big one, especially if you talk about how it supports student retention. And there's a number of studies out there that show it does support, you know, student success rates. Easy access available on the first day, big selling point right now for all those people whose publisher books are broken. Very customizable and adaptable. We really try to sell our faculty on this because academic freedom is important. And so if you say, like, you can customize this to fit your needs for how you teach your class, they tend to really like that. And I use examples from my class when we adopted one for interpersonal communication. There was one particular chapter from another OER text that we had adopted that I didn't like. So I just deleted it and I came up with some other additional readings for them to do instead. And I like to tell people with OER, you can do that, right? You can update that information as needed. Easy LMS integration, real easy to put into D2L. If you're using Canva, real easy, especially if you're using things like Pressbooks. You have a lot of different options. You know, there's increasing repositories out there, increasing resources out there. There's high quality. A lot of these places, OpenStax, Merlot, right? These sources go through peer review. So there's a lot of options out there. And then it's easier also to bring in diverse representation. So if you're trying to, it's like Joan Anderson, who teaches economics, you know, she's like, most economics textbooks are just, you know, old white men, right? And so she was able to customize her materials to bring in other voices. And then I know I'm probably getting short on time here. So some of the challenges, digital reading, some people still prefer the print. We let them know, like, hey, you can print using your print fees, you know, if you want to print part of it. Some of these OERs you can, you know, pay for a print copy for real cheap, like 25 bucks, right? You do have to have a device and internet access. I have made mine, you know, which is in Pressbooks, downloadable as a PDF, which helps, but all of our students need internet access anyways for our courses. They don't all have ancillaries yet, but a lot of people are working on those. So test banks are becoming more frequent. Homework platforms are being developed. Our math department has done a lot with my open math to develop out and replace my math lab. Obviously, the faculty and institutional buy-in. The institutional buy-in has been real easy. And so I don't have as much advice on that because our president and our VP of instruction are both very pro OER and they're very happy with what we're doing and, you know, are, you know, happy always to support it. But if you need to get buy-in, let them know about how it's going to impact your bottom line, the ROI, the student success rates, and so forth. The faculty buy-in, nobody is really like, hey, I don't like OER, or I don't like, I want my students to spend a bunch of money. It's more about, the quality of the materials, how much time is it going to take? So we always try to point out, like, here's some easy things you can do. Here's ways you can save time. And this is why the incentive funding program helps, because if faculty are getting compensated for the work of doing that, then they're more likely to do it. Knowledge, again, we just try to do a lot of professional development and then making sure they have the institutional support they need. So we have our committee, we have CITL, the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. So we do, we've built out over the years those supports to help with the materials. And that's it. I think I went a little over time and I apologize, but these are just some fun pictures of our committee members at various events and things that we've done. And again, we're a very happy little OER family here. All right.
Should I go and get started, Chelsea?
Yes, go ahead, Matthew.
Okay. Yeah, there was a question in the chat, but we'll do questions at the end, right?
Yeah, I think for something general like this, it makes the most sense because I think all your institutions have a form of an OER committee. And I can also chime in with that answer as well. So heading on to Red Rocks.
Yeah, so keep putting questions in the chat as they come up, and we will address those at the end. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthew Watts, and I'm assistant professor of mathematics at Red Rocks Community College, and I'm participating in one of the small group grants. And let's see. Let's see my screen up there. We'll do that instead. All right, so I actually did not start teaching at Red Rocks Community College. I started in Virginia on the East Coast at Tidewater Community College, and that's where I started with OER. And Tidewater Community College was the first college in the nation to offer a Z degree. At least that was the claim at the time. It was an exciting time around 2013, and I got to work with some of the folks helping to do it. It was an associate's in business administration, and we helped do some of the math courses there. And then in 2020, I came to Red Rocks Community College, and I was really happy to see that there was an Open Educational Resources Advisory Committee made up of folks from the library and faculty and administrators. And so I immediately got involved with that. And it historically was developed to help us manage grants like the one we're working on. And so we've been involved in some of these grants since 2019 as well, I think. And we've done the general incentive ones, but we've had more success with the small group ones lately. And so I'm currently involved in a small group one. But we've done a lot as a committee in addition to managing the grants. We've got a really cool LibGuide here, and I can share links for these things later on, where we kind of, as we're helping out with all these projects, we're putting resources and things in a common place where people can get to them later. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff here on like, oh, do you want to know more about OER in a specific subject? It's all broken down by subject so faculty can get to it. So shout out to Holly Stevens for putting together this LibGuide, and it's a great resource. We've also done some professional development. And so just briefly showing that we have sort of a list of resources from previous professional development events. We've done OER and DEI talks, OER and accessibility, things like that, sort of typical workshops and webinars like this one. And then we wanted to do something a little more asynchronous. And so our most recent option is a complete asynchronous online course developed by the committee. And with help from Holly Stevens, we run that twice. And then we're getting ready to run it again in the fall where I'll be facilitating. And so it's kind of an introduction to all the basic stuff in OER with quizzes and discussions and things like this. And of course, the complete course is OER. So if you need to grab a hold of this, get in touch with me, and we can send you the D2L cartridge. Now, when it comes to the grant itself, we've found that we get our best results by sending out a form to all faculty and instructors, sort of an interest form. And so I know this is pretty small here, but the general idea is, first make sure that you've contacted your supervisor, and then collecting a lot of the information that would go into it. So the form was built up looking at the grant proposal form. And so asking for, what type of category do you think this would fall into, using the category descriptions from the grant proposal? And what kind of courses and timeline and measures of success and all this information. And sometimes people have a lot of it and sometimes they don't. But this really makes it easier to go from just being interested in things to helping people put their ideas in a way where they can actually fill out one of these grants. Now, when it comes to a small group grant, I think most people would be looking at their department for others to collaborate with. At least that's how it was for me. And so in our mathematics department, we've got a bunch of great faculty. And so a lot of the folks involved in our grant are listed here. Johanna, Adam, Paige, folks like that. And so this keeps us, I think, collaborating as a department doing projects like this. And I think it's really helpful for departments as a whole, instead of us kind of being more insular in our design process. Now, when we look at courses that we're going to be working on, we have a long list of math courses. We really tried to look at enrollment as the main motivator. And so a course like college algebra, which is like half the sections we teach. That link timed out. Sign in again real quick. College algebra was one of the first ones that we targeted. And so now we've gotten towards the end. Congratulations, Megan, on getting we're just going to skip past this. Getting your whole department to go OER. That's our goal as well. And we're getting pretty close. We're down to the last few courses. And so we've targeted statistics, which is high enrollment, but it's been kind of left off because of challenges associated with technology and the available materials and things like that. And then once I'd say you got kind of a group of people that are interested, you really want a way to communicate. And so because the college seems to like us using Teams, we've decided to kind of use Teams as a way to chat and share documents. And so not really promoting Teams, but I think you do need a way other than just sending emails for you and your small group to be coordinating throughout the process. All right, then in terms of filling out the grant, I think you really want to kind of have a good idea what the project is. And so you kind of need the who, and then you kind of need the what, which is the courses. And then I think you need to think about where things are going to go. And so for textbooks, we've really gravitated towards this LibreText platform. And so LibreText has a whole bunch of OER books, and it is broken into libraries. So we're just looking at the statistics library here. But almost every well-known OER textbook is already going to be dumped into here, where you can use it wholesale or you can use it and remix it. So these are just a sample of some of the statistics books. And then when you go to remix it, you sort of create a custom version, and those lie in the campus bookshelves. So when you go to the campus bookshelves, you have access to the remixed and OER content created by all these other colleges across the nation, right? And so maybe even some of us are in here. So we have a campus bookshelf for math, but not yet for statistics, which is kind of a separate library. So when you actually go in and create this, you sort of create a project and you open up your project, and it's sort of an online version of your book. So we've got our kind of start here with our intro to stats book. And you're essentially going to be copying from other textbooks and remixing them and then editing and adding in your own content. Now, when you first bring in another textbook, it actually is going to, when you try to edit it, give you a little message, because what it's really doing is it's actually just sourcing from the original book, so that if there's changes to the original book on the bookshelves, those changes like edits and things like that, they'll follow through. And so if you actually want to make real changes to somebody else's section, then you need to go to the options and use the forker and create a fork or an alternate version of this text. Once you've created the fork, let's see if we did fork that, then we can actually go in and edit this. And then it's a fully editable HTML book. We can go in and put anything in there, pictures, videos, even the H5P interactives embedded into this. And it's all accessible and web-based. Now, this is all looking at statistics. Oh, one more thing. So we actually want to go to the remixer. Is such a cool tool, real quickly to show you that. We can instantly go into the full bookshelves, right? And so again, you are just in one library, but here's all those statistics books. And so grab any stats book you want, open it up. You want to grab this chapter, just bring it over. Now that's a chapter in your book, hit save, and you've done it. And you can grab chapters from all the books, throw them in here, order them. It'll automatically change the chapter numbers, and then you can go in and edit everything. So super cool tool. Let me know if you want help with that. Again, we've just been looking at statistics, but every subject is in here. They're broken up by, so you can search in the Commons for a specific book, but you can also look in the specific libraries. And so if you want to go right into chemistry or humanities or whatever it is. So that's what we've done for textbooks. For videos, we've been using YouTube. And I think one of the important things to mention with YouTube is that the automatic captions aren't up to proper accessibility standards. And sometimes you might want to share that workload. And so when you go into your video library, you can go into settings and permissions, and you can actually add people as subtitle editors. So I've had people contact me, they say they want to use my videos, but they don't have good enough subtitles. I can't give them access to my Google account. This gives them just enough permission to go in and put in the proper subtitles. So really cool feature there that people may not know. And remember, the default license is the YouTube license, but you can change it for a video to a Creative Commons license. Now, My Math was mentioned. That's been our platform for online assessment. The software itself does have a copyright, but in general, the platform is free and open. And it's not just, let's see, it's not just math content. It's mostly math, but you see these libraries here. We've got accounting, chemistry, physics, finance, astronomy, and engineering and sports and stuff. So anything that's sort of math adjacent has found a home in here for being used for this free online assessments. And then when you go in and actually create a question, which is one of the great features, I can just go in and make something. It does default to a private license, but you can then, once it's working, allow everybody to use it. And then you can retain copyright, or you can use a Creative Commons license, or you can use an iMath AS license, or make it public domain. So kind of gives you that option as you go in and do that. Now, technology has become an increasing part of our math courses. And Python seems to be the go-to computer language for open source computation. So we've been using our own sort of server-hosted version of Jupyter Notebooks, which we call Data Lab, to get students ready for going to places like Mines, where they'll be regularly using Python and things like that. A lot of our STEM students transfer to Mines and engineering. And what's great about this is that in our library, we've got the names here of every math faculty, and everybody can just kind of go in there, create all their files, and we have free access to share all these. And then we can easily share those out on GitHub or something once they're ready to go. All right, so those are kind of all the places we've been working to set things up. And then just real quickly, want to end off with the motivation behind all this, right? That we still have a few courses where this is an obstacle for students. And so we've been battling with our bookstore with automatic textbook billing. And one of the latest tricks they've been trying is charging these like 2-year rental fees that are more than they should be. But even at the best case scenario is you get these $118 fees. And while that may not seem like a lot of money to some of us, to some of our students, that's enough to prevent them from being successful. We have a food pantry and other resources that indicate that we still have a lot of students that don't have this kind of extra money. And when you see things like this, where I remember when I first did start here, and I would see the blood donation people on campus, it really, really hurt me. So I've seen less of that, and I think we are making a lot of progress. And I continue everybody to keep doing the good work.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, everyone. I'm third today. My name is Susan Reynolds, and I'm teaching professor civil and environmental engineering at Colorado School of Mines. So it's nice that I'm going after the Red Rocks, Matthew, because you acknowledge the link. We have a lot of Red Rock students that do continue at Mines. All right, I'll be speaking about an individual OER grant, and it supports the OER I created. It's called Statics, a student-centered approach. Just a little bit about me. So I'm a teaching professor. I've been at Mines since 2012. And that means I do 75% teaching and 25% service. I'm a structural engineer and architect. My teaching goes from fundamental engineering courses like statics and mechanics materials up into some more niche engineering courses for seniors and even into the graduate level. My scholarship these days is around evidence-based teaching practices, neuro-inclusivity, OERs, and visualizations for engineering mechanics. My OER journey, goodness, it's going to sound a little different than the other two speakers today. So I kind of stumbled upon this realm of scholarship myself, and it had everything to do with the pandemic. So prior to COVID, I had a lot of hands-on physical models for teaching, like this wood cube you see down at the bottom left of the screen, is to teach students about vector fields and the types of subscripts and sign conventions we use for those types of vectors in 3D space. As I had to pivot to online teaching, I started to make new digital models to replace the old physical models. And so you can see an example of that on the right side. As I got more and more comfortable with sharing the materials I've created with the academic community, I started putting more and more of my teaching materials online. And it culminated in this website. So I called it Seeing Structures. The URL's down at the bottom of the screen. And as of today, I have a first edition substantially complete statics text. I have a third edition mechanics materials learning platform. And then in structural analysis and construction, I have lesson level models or prompts, things like that. So lots of work that I'd like to continue doing in this realm. My motivation to create a statics resource came from teaching statics since 2015. And I started with the Hibbler text, which is a very widely used statics textbook. And it came with the Mastering Engineering platform. Obviously, the students bear the cost for that. I wasn't satisfied with learning outcomes. And so in 2019, I moved into an OER, Engineering Statics Open and Free by Doyar and Steve. And I loved the sequencing of that open source text, but I also recognized that I had an opportunity to contribute because I have strengths in graphics. So hand graphics, drawings, kind of my architectural background, spatial analysis, digital models, CAD models, animations, all of that kind of thing. This is just kind of an example of a hand drawing that I did for my statics class, for my statics OER. This is just drawing by hand, kind of using my tablet. So just kind of a sample of some of my work. And I'd like to say that working on these OERs has really been an intersection of things in my life that bring me joy personally, like drawing, and then also bringing these OER to my students. So it's a way to merge almost like a personal hobby with my career and my profession, and that's been really fulfilling. So the project overview for the CDHE funding I received for this individual grant. So again, it was titled Statics, a Student-Centered Approach. Emphasizes mastery of fundamental engineering concepts. So this is usually the first engineering course that students take. And so when you're doing this for the first time, students often can feel the imposter syndrome, or they can be very nervous about kind of moving from math and science coursework into engineering coursework. And so I didn't want to emphasize kind of memorization of solution algorithms. I really wanted students to understand the fundamental concepts that would apply through their entire degree. Employs a thoughtful sequencing strategy. So I put a lot of work in kind of the sequencing of the text, how the topics are, each one builds on the prior one. And it has some fun features that the students really like. So 2D flip books with a step-by-step approach and interactive 3D digital models. And I have some examples of both of these on the next few slides. So this is an example of a flip book. And so this one, some of these are computer, CAD generated kind of vector images. Some are raster images hand-drawn like this. And students can essentially go into each one of these and flip back and forth. So we have 3 slides, 1, 2, 3. This is in the first chapter of the book. It's essentially reiterating Newton's third law, which they learned in a physics class, but kind of customizing it and explain the way we're going to use that in statics and the importance of free body diagrams and how to show forces on those free body diagrams. I also note that the fingernail is pretty awesome in my opinion, and it shows kind of the joy and a little bit of fun and humor that I like to bring to my work to try to break down some of those, intimidation, imposter syndrome, stereotypes that the young engineering students can have. This is a quick pre-recorded movie. And what I wanted to show here is that in these engineering courses, at least the ones that I teach, there's a really strong visual spatial component. So we're looking at fields in 3Ds. We're always looking at XYZ coordinate systems. Here we have forces applied to a member, and then we see the subsequent types of stresses that occur because of those forces that are applied. So the OERs for this type of field have this really strong visual component, and I felt like I really had something to contribute and build to the work that others have already done. I wanted to also provide a little bit of information to people that are new to OER. So the first 2 presenters talked a lot about kind of a top-down approach where you have institutional support and institutional level plans or departmental level plans. And then you have people kind of working to execute those plans. And my experience has kind of been the opposite. So it's very much been bottom up, kind of an interest that I had, that then kind of I would go and talk to our on-campus OER leadership. So just a shout out to Seth and Brianna, who are both awesome. They're in our library and kind of lead our campus OER efforts. So talk to those types of folks when you start to get started. If you're like me and kind of, bottom up growing OER at your campus, definitely get support from your department head, and keep in mind that sometimes there are changes in leadership. And so to go from one department head that may be more supportive to another department head that's maybe less supportive can happen. So I also would advise soliciting support from other people, other decision makers on campus, just to kind of build buy-in for the project that you want to do. And when you have those conversations, right, it's not just creating the OER, but also teaching with it as a pilot. Getting into the details of the grant, again, if you're new to this field, the first thing to learn about is Creative Commons license. I would say the second thing is your institution's IP policy, especially for online classes. So at Mines, we have more stringent IP policies for online campus where the university owns the materials versus for in-person classes where faculty do maintain their intellectual property. So kind of get up to speed on what your institutional policies are. Hosting, in the last presentation, you heard Matthew talk about LibreText and some of the existing repositories. I actually chose to buy a domain, and that gave me a little bit more control over the interface and what it looked like. So that's an important decision to make because there are pros and cons of choosing either one of these 2 approaches. you kind of get more control if you buy a domain, but you also kind of lose that back and forth copy paste in the existing repository. And if you do your own work on your own domain, you have to be more proactive about accessibility. Under accessibility, something definitely to learn about. It's complicated. I've learned a ton. I feel like I learn more every day. It's a really vast and quickly developing field. But for first-time users, if you are doing OER that has any math whatsoever, math, science, engineering, learn about math accessibility first. I chose to build my site on Google Sites because I felt like I could build it quickly. It's very, easy user interface, but it turns out that it's pretty awful for math accessibility. So that's been a real trial for me. And learn about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, if that's a new term for you. In terms of some of the successes and challenges of my project, the successes are the feedback I get from students, the grades they got in my course, and the learning that they accomplished. And I just included 4 student quotes from the end of term evaluations here. And I'll just kind of highlight a few phrases. So the first textbook I've ever read from and fully understood what is being said. The textbook's easy to use and read. It makes learning hard material easier because it breaks down hard concepts into bite-sized pieces. The strengths of the course include the textbook self-made by the professor. Textbook is more approachable for students than traditional textbooks. And having examples and problems hand-drawn and handwritten make the work feel more manageable at our level. In terms of challenges, which I'd also like to kind of put a positive spin and say future work. So the timing of peer review, which is, peer review is needed, first of all, just to debug and correct errors in any type of a math or engineering or computational type text, but also in using terminology and vocabulary and all that kind of thing. When does peer review happen? Does it happen during your individual project? Does it happen after? Where do you sequence that? So I haven't had a chance to do peer review yet, and that is kind of my next project that I would like to do, is solicit funding to do some peer review of my text in order to improve adoption. Also, OERs for large multi-section courses have many instructors. So at Mines, we have many sections of statics, I think like 20 per year or something. That means lots of instructors, including full-time folk, but also adjuncts. There is kind of a movement on our campus to have consistent approaches across all sections, which present challenges for piloting a new OER in one section without adopting it in all. So that's been one challenge that I've been facing. And then also OERs for computational courses may need a complementary auto-grading homework site. So the resources that we have as instructors almost require us to use auto-grading sites for evaluating student homework assignments. And so since my site doesn't yet have that, I think that's another kind of challenge, barrier to adoption and future work that I'd like to pursue. To kind of wrap up on a positive note, one of the big success of my project is, new opportunities that come along. And so I want to introduce a couple of colleagues and collaborators I'm working with currently on a federally funded OER grant. So from left to right, this is Dan Baker, Meg Brown-Sika, Trung Duong, and me. They're all 3 out of the CSU system, 2 from Fort Collins, 1 from Pueblo, and we're working together on an OER project, 3-year OER project funded by the Department of Education for visualizations of engineering mechanics. So super excited to be on that team and really can draw a line between the work done on this little individual grant to kind of bigger opportunities at the national scale. So super excited to share that. And summary and thanks. So I've got a QR code if anybody wants to stay in touch. If you want to scan this, feel free to do so. But I just want to thank CDHE, but also Governor Polis and his leadership for promoting OER in Colorado. Happy to live here in a state that supports these types of initiatives. A couple links to my current work and future work on the new engineering visualization project. And especially since I'm kind of this bottom-up creating content, I would love to find other OER creators in Colorado. So if you're out there and want to chat, please reach out to me. My students, when they see the work I've done for statics, often say that they wish that I had helped them through their Calc 3 course. So I think there's opportunities to bring some of the spatial visualization to kind of other math and science fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, Matthew, and Megan. We'll pop now to some Q&A. We'll start off with the question that popped into the chat earlier after Megan's talk, but all three of you have OER committees at your institutions and probably have different approaches and different experiences with them. So the question is, can you speak a little bit about the OER committee and the tasks it takes on? Megan, do you want to kick us off with a response to that, since it did result from you, but then Matthew also, you all ended up all mentioning the committee, which was fantastic. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah, our committee does a lot. So we meet bi-weekly throughout the fall and spring semesters, and then we kind of touch base over email during the summer. Our first meeting for the semester is actually Wednesday or Thursday. And yeah, at the bi-weekly meetings, a lot of it is updates, check-ins, planning for larger things like brainstorming, what do we want to do for, Open Ed Week, what kind of professional development do we want to do? And then that's also when we get applications to our incentive funding program, we review them as a team, and then we vote to, either approve or not approve, or, we need more information from this faculty member. And then we also have a few subcommittees within that. So we have a data subcommittee. They help draft our surveys and pull some of our data reports. We have a professional development subcommittee that helps with, figuring out what kind of PD do we want to do this semester. And we have marketing and communication. So, are we going to make flyers, help, event planning, things like that. And then we're also now starting off with kind of an advocacy committee to, think about, the student advocacy side, but also how can we continue to advocate across the college for OER.
Megan, brief follow-up. What kind of institutional roles are represented on your OER committee?
Sure.
Jobs.
Yeah, most of us are faculty, and we are a variety of disciplines. I'm very excited because I put out a call for, we had a couple people leave ACC last year, and so I put out a call, and I got 3 new members, and they are in mortuary science, which is exciting because we've been trying to go OER with them. There's hardly any textbooks in general, let alone OER, so I'm excited for that. Biology, which is one of my biggest departments we're trying to get into. And then computer science, who's already been doing a bunch of cool stuff with OER, and those books are not cheap. We do have currently one part-time instructor in English, but like I said, I really want instructor representation is important to me, so we're hoping to add a second instructor. And then we also have our OER and reference librarian, who you may be familiar with, Mitch Coda. We have Spencer Ellis. He's a part-time OER assistant who is funded through the grant. And then a couple folks from CITL, one of our instructional designers, and then our LMS coordinator. So a little bit of everybody.
All right, Matthew, and then Susan.
Yeah, the OER committee, I mentioned we did some professional development events and that kind of thing. And we do manage and oversee the grants like this one. And so sometimes that's a matter of when those interest forms comes in, you'll have 2 people from a similar department or the same department doing a similar project they didn't even know about. And so we'll do these kind of consultations and talk with them and even connect people onto group projects that we're thinking of doing individually. Once the grants are in, then we do have coordination to manage the funds and help people filling out their timesheets and putting in their reports and things like that. When the committee first started, we actually didn't have a full-time grants person, but we now do, and so we've been working with them. So we try to keep a co-chair model where one co-chair is faculty. I did that for a little while, and now it's Jenny Tettamore. And then another co-chair is sort of administrator. Robert Vaughn was our library director, I think is in this meeting, was the administrative co-chair at one point. And that way we can kind of bridge the gap between, faculty and administration and provide the support and resources to everyone the best we can. But it's just a really great group of people, and a lot of it is just sharing ideas, information, talking about the great conferences. I mean, this year especially with the national conference coming to Denver, but again, Chelsea always hosting an amazing conference in Colorado. And so going to events like that really kind of helps build that community, I think.
Yeah, I can echo some of the same sentiments. So again, our committee also is chaired by the librarians, but has faculty representation. I haven't served on the committee, but as kind of an active OER creator on campus, they're my go-to people for questions I may have. So I actually just scheduled a meeting just a couple of weeks ago to talk about, next opportunities, next steps. And I was given information about conferences coming up and all that kind of stuff. So kind of from my perspective, the committee is just kind of a resource that I can reach out to and get information from when it's needed.
All right, thank you all. Is there any other questions for either a specific presenter or the whole group? All right, if no one's going to mute or add a question, I'm going to end with one general question for all three of you. But what advice would you give to someone who is applying to your grant category this year? One quick piece of, a snippet advice.
I guess I would say, so if you're going for general incentive fund, we started small, right? You have to start small and build momentum. So yes, you can ask for $50,000, but if you don't know what you're going to spend that on, don't apply for that. If you form some agreements with some faculty early on and you identify like which particular courses you really want to pursue, then you can have really targeted funding for that, and then you can always, expand later.
I think with any of them, you definitely want to make sure that you're following all the rules and protocols for your institution. If you have a grants person, definitely get in touch with them. Your supervisor, get in touch with them. But assuming all that's all set up, I would start thinking with the small groups about how the actual labor might be divided up. People might be going with assumptions of like, oh, well, I want to make the videos, and you find out two people, they just wanted to make the videos, and suddenly you don't have things kind of covered. And so, that it's fine early on to be kind of thinking about who's going to do what. Because I think at the end of the day, that's a really big decision, and it really plays a big part in how the work actually gets done.
I think my soundbite for the individual grants would be that, like, if you're a person that is creative and you're building your own course material and your own lessons, your own slides already, this is really a place to kind of actually kind of get compensated for the work that you're doing anyway, but also kind of have your work showcased, impact students. The students love it when their professor wrote the text that's being used. That makes a huge difference. And so you benefit on all kinds of levels to doing an individual project.
All right, thank you all. Megan, Matthew, Susan, you were fantastic presenters today, and I know you as fantastic PIs for your grants. Arapahoe Community College, Red Rocks Community College, and mine in Colorado School of Mines are doing incredible OER work. And all three of you are to thank for spearheading your own work in that. Just as a final reminder, OER grant proposals are due Monday, September 15th. That's only a few weeks away. If you don't personally know me, I am Chelsea Boley, the Director of Open Education at the Colorado Department of Higher Ed. I'm the person behind all the emails you get. And so if you have any questions about the grant program, please email oerdhe.state.co.us. I can answer logistical things and also review your budget if for any red flags or concerns that grant reviewers might have. But ultimately, it is a team of 12 of us who will make the grant recommendations. But thank you for our speakers. And for anyone who's watching the recording, please follow up if you have additional questions for either our speakers or myself.